Welcome to another episode of Heroic Hotline. We are extremely blessed to be joined by Dr. George Weigel, the author of many books, including those on Pope John Paul II. And he wrote one on letters to young Catholics, which I found very interesting as well. And I'm hoping to dive into that. As heroic men, we try to especially reach the young men. So welcome to Heroic Hotline.
Thank you, Sean. Good to be with you. How are things in Calgary?
It is beautiful and we are blessed. The Blue Jays are in the World Series and the Flames won the hockey game last night. So
There you go.
we're very happy up here.
Very good.
So you've had quite a storied career, being able to meet, I think, the last three popes personally, and just you speak on culture and faith extensively. That's why I thought it was important to get you on the show, and just I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we reach young men. I saw your book on letters to young Catholics. You talk a lot about beauty and the need for showing them the beauty of today, of the church, of faith. So where would you start if you were wanting to reach out to young men today?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for your work in the new evangelization. That's great stuff. And I hope it bears real fruit for the church in Western Canada and indeed throughout the English speaking world. Sean, I don't think there's any one formula for this. Young men today are a disturbed group of people, I have to say. I tomorrow on the anniversary of the 60th anniversary of the Second Vatican Council's adoption of the Declaration on the Church's relationship to non-Christian religions. I'm speaking, among other things, about the problem of a rising anti-Semitism among young men, which is being fueled almost entirely by social media nonsense and internet craziness. So that's that whole world of instant commentary by ignorant people is a real obstacle to evangelization. I think probably the best way to think about this in macro terms is that the best evangelizers of young men are other young men or young priests or youngish priests who can provide an example of true manliness, of true masculinity, informed by personal friendship with the Lord Jesus Christ, the incarnate Son of God. That ought to at least open young minds to the question, might I be able to live like that? Might I be able to live like that? I mean, that world of social media and the internet is a pretty dark place. And parts of it are getting darker all the time. So to invite to invite young men into real friendship, real fellowship, Eucharistic fellowship, ecclesial fellowship, fellowship within the body of Christ, is really inviting them out of darkness into light. And that is often best done by other men. You've got CCA in Canada, we've got Focus here in the United States, these young people to young people campus ministries. These are very important new evangelization initiatives. So certainly the support of them is very good. The effective campus ministries at the high school and college level are very, very important. And bringing young men into real Catholic communities. I mean, this dark world of the internet and social media is also a very lonely world. It's guys sitting in their mother's basement looking at screens. That's not a humane way of living. And to invite people into real friendships might be a way to break them out of that darkness.
And that's something that we've leaned heavily into, is that loneliness, to try and build brotherhood is what we're calling it, and reach out. And it's interesting you talk about the rise of anti-Semitism. Our speaker last year, Father Deacon Andrew Bennett, has done a lot of work up here in Canada with Cardis in this area of trying to speak into that arena. And we have worked with CCO. In fact, starting this Saturday, we have the founder, Andre Renier, leading a 30-day challenge in praying, teaching people how to pray. So we're working with these organizations. And in your book, you talk about St. Mary's in Greenville, I believe it is, South Carolina, and we have a younger priest up here that started the St. Francis Xavier Chaplaincy Choir, and it's choir mass. The choir is phenomenal. And he has young, like, university age men serving as the altar servers, and there's usually like 8 of them, and it's a longer mass, which is interesting. That's what's attracting the young people, is the beauty of the mass. And they have a very traditional choir that sings extremely well, and it seems to be just resonating and attracting the young people. And we're talking
Yeah,
young professionals.
that's encouraging. I was a couple of weeks ago with a former student of mine, Father Rhett Williams, who's the Catholic chaplain at the University of South Carolina. And in the course of this meeting that both he and I attended, someone asked him, "What's the secret to your success?" I mean, he brings 25 or 30 young people into the church every Easter vigil. And he said, "Time. You have to be available, and there has to be time made to engage young people one on one." So CCO focus, I mean, these are people who have given their time in order to spend time with young people, and that's very important. The dignified celebration of the liturgy is obviously part of this as well. And then, what you're describing about choirs and altar servers and whatnot. I mean, a while ago when I was a young man or a teenager, you wanted to be part of a team, and a team that knew what the heck it was doing. My high school basketball team started off 0-15 my senior year. That was not a lot of fun, and to be on what is manifestly, if you will, a winning team is it can be attractive, especially in this world of loneliness that we are describing. But time is essential. I mean, you just can't do this on the fly. It has to be a real investment of time on the part of campus ministers, on the part of clergy, and on the part of youth to youth missionaries.
Are you seeing a hunger out there? I watched some reporting from CBC, which I don't normally watch, but they had shown the swing, especially amongst young men, voting 20%, 26% conservative, I think, in 2015, where it was up to 75 to 85% conservative in the last federal election. And there's been this large swing of young men, especially, to more conservative outlook, whereas the young women stayed the same, according to this survey that they had done for CBC, and there's a hunger, and I think there's the young men are tired of being like canceled, as it were.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's a factor on both sides of the 49th parallel. Um, I don't really know about much about Canadian electoral politics. It seems, except that Donald Trump seems to have a lot of effect on them. But
Yes, he does.
yeah, which is unfortunate. But in any event, uh, I think you see something of that here, but it often gets attached to weird stuff. It often
Okay.
gets attached to a kind of hyper nationalism that is disturbing because it leads to, racism and anti-Semitism and all sorts of other stuff. It can lead to a kind of um, uh, temptation to authoritarianism. Now, we're all fighting the authoritarianism of the nanny state on both sides of the border. But the answer to the authoritarianism of the nanny state is not the authoritarianism of, king whomever or queen whomever.
Yeah.
It's the renewal of democracy itself. So yeah, perhaps we're at a moment where people are fed up with being told how awful they are and are reacting to that. But it's our task to fill that vacuum with good content and not with crazy stuff.
Well, and that's an area that we're trying to jump into with Heroic Men, which we've developed as the brand. In the South, it's the Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance, and up here it's God Squad Canada Society, are the two charities. But we're moving forward with the brand Heroic Men to try and capture the imagination and then define what is a heroic man and a virtuous man. And so through interviews with people like you and articles and conferences, and just build that brotherhood so that they're walking together. And that's where it's so important for men like us to do that mentoring of these young men, because they are searching for where they belong in the world.
Yeah, we also have a lot of good audiovisual material today that wasn't available 20 or 30 years ago. I was saying to a group just yesterday, a group of medical professionals I was talking to at their after the annual White Mass in Baltimore for medical professionals. And they were, how do I be an evangelist in the medical profession, or even in my parish or my neighborhood or whatever? I said, look, with Bishop Barron's Catholicism series is the most compelling visual presentation of Catholic faith ever developed. I mean, if you invite people over to your home to watch the first one of those 10 videos, they're going to want to see the next nine. The Augustine Institute produces all sorts of
Yeah.
terrific stuff in its formed program. So there's no lack of materials out there. And then um, I'm very happy that Letters to a Young Catholic, which is in its original edition 20 years old or almost 20 years old, and in its revised edition is 10 or 12 years old, continues to sell very well and seems to be quite useful in campus ministries at the college level. And it's a book. It's an alternative to a screen. It's something that you can actually take in your hand and read a bit of at a time and think about it, and you don't have to have an instant reaction to it. And that can be a relief in the culture that a lot of our young people find themselves in today.
Yeah, you talk. So my wife and I, we started up Catholic Corner, a mobile bookstore, just trying to get. Do you remember those Saint Joseph cassette tapes that where you had Scott Hahn's conversion story and Steve
Ah,
Woods, and yeah,
I'm
so
so old. I remember the St. Joseph Daily Missal from from the 1950s. That was long before Scott
yeah,
Hahn's tapes.
yeah, but there wasn't a lot of solid stuff that you could share for evangelization. Where, like you say, today the search on Formed, I think, is incredible. Catholicism. We have a series called Be a Man by Father Larry Richards, just helping men understand what it means to be a man. There's so many materials out there. CCO has their materials, and making missionary disciples from Focus. That's one of the things that we're using to focus our efforts on, because we want to make missionary disciples of all men is our goal. And I'm lucky I only have Canada to do so. uh but getting into, like you talked about, the cathedrals and stuff, we were on our motorcycle ride with Bishop Scott McCaig this year, and we hit 5 out of the 6 national shrines in Canada. And the beauty and rich history there, I think, needs to be unlocked again for people, because it's those places are incredible. Like, you go in there and yeah, it changes your heart just seeing the beauty of these places.
Yeah, I my family and I have a summer place up in the Ottawa Valley, across the Ottawa River from Pembroke on Alumet Island. And occasionally we'll go up to Saint Anne de Beaupré or St. Joseph's Oratory in Montreal, and the latter is particularly striking when now Saint Andre Bessette died, the guy who built St. Joseph's Oratory. There were 500,000 people in the streets of Montreal for his funeral. And you wouldn't get 500,000 people in the streets of Montreal if somehow the Habs won the cup again. So I mean, there's there's a real opening there to recover, as you say, a great heritage. It's quite sad for me actually to drive through, to drive from say, Ottawa to Quebec City, and virtually every other town, if not 2 out of 3, is named after a saint, and yet the church seems to be as dead as a doornail in Quebec, and that is a lack of evangelical fervor. That is a lack of evangelical fervor, and I think it's going to be lay associations and initiatives like yours that are going to turn that around, because there seems to be some sort of paralysis in the official church there.
There is signs of hope as well. I've been talking to uh, people in Montreal, and they're getting more young people out at marches, or like the Way of the Cross, which
Sure.
the government's trying to outlaw. And there is a lot of hope. I was just out with the Canadian Council of Catholic Bishops meeting on movements and associations, where seeing how we can work together with our bishops to move the needle. And we were
Well,
out at, go ahead.
there in Alberta for many years, you had my good friend Archbishop Richard Smith in Edmonton, who,
Yes.
who reconfigured the entire diocesan organization for evangelization. I mean, it's one of the most impressive efforts in North America, and of course he's now in Vancouver, where another good friend of mine, Archbishop Mike Miller, built a similar new evangelization archdiocese. So I know things are going on. I think that I wish that would seep into Francophone Canada a bit
and
more.
and I think it will. I think it will, because I'm talking to men in French speaking areas and seeing if we can't light a fire. And yeah, our bishop here in Calgary has done a great job with the whole movement, where he's done a diocesan renewal. If you look at our videos, they're very well done. And he three to, making missionary disciples, number one, being a church of encounter, number two, and supporting the family as the number three. Those are the three initiatives that each parish is called to enact in their parish, and in a hope of renewal of the church. And we are seeing the fruits, like that. The cathedral, I think, had something like 60 people come into the church with that young person's mass. We had 33 at our parish. So there is that renewal. And you talked about St. Joseph's Oratory. We dropped off a score of the Litany of St. Joseph. So please, if you have time at some point, we commissioned the Litany of St. Joseph in song, and it was premiered here in Calgary. The Apostolic Nuncio attended, very much loved it, and so he wanted a score as well to go to the Vatican. So we dropped that off this summer in Ottawa for him, and it's meant to just honor Saint Joseph as our patron of Canada, patron of our ministry here in Calgary, and Heroic Men Canada, and just the man that wrote it, he wanted to incorporate the history of music in Canada with, he has 13 movements to represent the 13 provinces and territories. So it's very very rich, and I believe beautiful. So
Good. Well, perhaps you could be kind enough to send me a link to that. I'd like to hear that.
I will
That'd be
do
great.
that. So I know you have to get going here, and I want to thank you. Is there any last message you'd like to say to the heroic men that we are reaching out to?
Well, thank you, first of all, Sean, for your work, and to the men you're working with. I would say there is nothing more satisfying in this life than bringing others into a relationship of friendship with the incarnate Son of God. Because to meet the Lord Jesus, as the Second Vatican Council taught, is to meet both the truth about God and the truth about us, who we are, what we're called to be, what our eternal destiny is. And so to introduce others to that friendship is as good as it gets in this life, and provides for a life of endless satisfactions in being a true friend to others and a true man for other men.
Thank you so much. And if you're ever out west here, we'll gladly host you here in Calgary and take good care of you. So God bless you and keep up the amazing work that God has called you to. And we look forward to meeting you again.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks very much. Bye bye.
Bye.